Hello, humans. It is I. Welcome to episode 1 of Clearly Stated, where today I'm going to discuss various concepts and terms and have an introduction to sort of what queer is and sort of a way to kind of base what I plan on talking about in the future on. What is queer? For those of you who have never heard of queer or are not really familiar with it, queer is basically a term that means and includes any sort of self-identification or person who identifies in any way that is not heteronormative, meaning that they do not identify as straight, they are not necessarily attracted to strictly someone of the opposite sex, and that their gender identity may be something that is neither male or female, or it could be male when people think they're female, and all sorts of other combinations. And I can go into detail about that a little bit more later, but just kind of the basic idea. So, yeah. So now I guess I can talk about heterosexism. At least this country, a lot of other countries do practice heterosexism, the assumption that everyone is straight, and the assumption that everyone is the gender that they were told they were at birth. And heterosexism can be institutionalized, it can be just, discrimination between people, and it's basically any time that someone, I guess, kind of denies the right of a queer person to be themselves, and a sort of broad term, but it is something that's important to look at. There's a lot of queer heterosexism in the media. Sometimes, I think my friend was telling me an example of a show that was on Disney Channel where a character was pretty much blatantly gay in the beginning of the series, but later they forced him to be straight. That could be seen as sort of heterosexist. I'm hoping I'm giving good examples here. If you have questions or don't really understand it, you're welcome to comment and let me know, and I will try to type up something better. Next, I'd like to talk about sort of what homosocial means. Because this is another, I've got a loose guideline here, but this is something I will eventually be talking about a lot more, and that I'll be looking at in some of my videos. When I say homosocial, it means that a scenario where characters or people are among all the same members of the same sex, if you will. So, I guess one way you could think about it is, if you're in an area where mostly everyone is male or mostly everyone is female, then it's considered homosocial because there aren't members of the opposite sex, if that makes sense. Now, I don't know who coined this term. One of my professors says this a lot, so I'm going to use it. I credit him, but I don't know if it has come from somewhere else and need to do more research. But I'll say that he coined it for now. Homopolis. And basically that means strictly a homosocial setting. So I think how I would define this is, I've been reading a lot of books, older English gay literature, where a lot of these male characters are all together, but they'll have female characters somewhere in the text, but they're not really main characters, they don't have any really main involvement, and so that's sort of more homosocial setting where they're mostly around the same sex, so there's a bunch of guys in one setting, but there are women too, but not as often, very kind of excluded. And then I would say that Homopolis is strictly men. So, something like Billy Budd, where you've got all of these male characters on a ship out to sea, there's no women around, that is a Homopolis. That makes sense. Let me pull up my other guide here. I'm actually taking a thing that my instructor has uploaded, where he has a list of things that I want to talk about, so, besides sexuality and gender and feminism and all those things, I guess I need to explain the difference between sex and gender, because I know some people don't know that there is even a difference. Basically, your sex is your biological sex. It's, based on the genitalia that you have when you're born. The problem with how we define sex is that what if you're born intersex? meaning you have ambiguous genitalia, you have mixed genitalia and reproductive organs. They're different or separate or just not male or female in any way. And this is typically caused by different chromosomal patterns, and you can go look this up. Just search intersex, and you can read all about it. And so when we take examples of people who are like this, you realize that because you have these exceptions, there is not just one or the other. So that leads me into mentioning that we have binaries in society: male and female, girl and boy, straight or gay, because no one likes gray area for some reason. And the same thing applies for gender too. There is a spectrum of sexualities and spectrums of genders. But to really define what gender is, a good way of thinking of it is sex is down here and gender is up here. So your gender is something that you identify as, that you can feel and express, and it is your own. And though we have come up with these labels to describe how people identify, it's not really describing who they are, but they are defining the labels. See? So yeah, there is a difference. Not the same. I did mention spectrums. There are spectrums of sexualities too. There is not just gay, straight, and bi, because when we look at alternative gender identities, you start to realize that there's even more combinations of people. So, besides having masculine and feminine genders, there are genders that are in between, or there are genders that are not really genders. Some people feel that they are bigendered, or gender fluid, meaning that they can identify sometimes as maybe a guy, and sometimes they're not a guy and they're a girl, and sometimes they're neither. It fluctuates. So does your sexual identity. Some people will grow up, maybe thinking that they were straight, and then they sort of became bisexual, or they could be bisexual and then later on lean to gay, or something like that. So gender and sex are fluid. Gender and sexuality are fluid. So I'm hoping that I'm kind of showing that these things fluctuate, and there are spectrums. There is no one way to be a person, basically. So just think about that. Even though our society likes to say, well, you're a man, or you're a woman, or you gotta be gay, or you gotta be straight. Doesn't have to be true. I'm a good example of this. I am neither gay nor straight, and I don't really identify as male or female, or somewhere in the transgender spectrum. And I don't think I really covered transgender. Transgender means that you identify as a gender that is not the one that was given to you at birth. So I was told that I was female at birth, and I'm like, I'm not female. I'm not specifically FTM, female to male transgender, meaning that I identify as male or highly masculine. I kind of am somewhere in between. I just don't know yet where I feel like I fit. So yeah, what else is there? A lot of things that we look at in queer theory come from feminism. So sometimes I will come up with feminist theories. And if you don't know what feminism is, some people associate feminism with like angry women or lesbians or something. Not all of them are like that. Feminism is basically the equality of, for this purpose, the genders, the gender binary. So that it is just a long-standing history all the way back from the Victorian era, and prior to that, you have these movements and movements and movements that have led into women being able to vote, and women having a lot more rights, and even though women don't get paid as much as men still, we're getting there. And so, yeah, feminism is awesome. I'm a feminist. I believe in equality. What else am I missing? I didn't mention some of the different sexualities there are, that are not well known. For one, there's, by the way, bisexuality exists, it's real. For some reason, there's a lot of negative stigma towards bisexuality, when really there's nothing wrong with it at all. It's perfectly fine. I don't identify as bisexual, but I understand it. And a lot of people think that, oh, you must be promiscuous if you are bisexual, you can't have a monogamous relationship, blah, 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 all these stereotypes. But to be bisexual just means that you are attracted to either gender equally, or maybe not equally, but you can identify it however you like. Now, this isn't to be confused with pansexual. Pansexuality means that your love sees no gender. You can be romantically and sexually attracted to anyone of any gender identity, any sex, any person of any sexuality, doesn't matter. You will like them no matter what. Now there's another one that what is it called? I gotta look it up again. I'll make a video when I talk about it because I think it's really interesting. There is a sexuality that is not really well known that talks about being attracted to just queer people, not straight people. It's very interesting. There's all kinds of things. Like I said, this is a spectrum. So yeah, I think that's a pretty good introduction for right now on that kind of thing. There are certain systems in our society that are negative and discriminatory, and so I may talk about these and show them and how they exist in the media. Let's see what else there is. I think that's a pretty good introduction for this right now. I don't really want to go into too much. I just sort of wanted to give a brief introduction on how aren't binaries. Binaries are things that we made up, but they're not how people identify. And yeah. If you're interested in researching more, you can just do a quick Google search on queer. Wikipedia has a lot of information on this, and you can read about queer theory and how it came out of feminism, and you can read about all the different kinds of identities there are. So I'm hoping this was an inspirational episode. Even though I didn't really get to do any sort of what I really want to do for this series, I wanted to make an episode and have something uploaded and to remind myself and to be dedicated to my fans and my viewers that I want to do a series. I want to work on things like this. I want to get in the habit of doing it. So yeah, thanks for watching. I'll put some links in the description when I review what I've said. And yeah, so thanks a lot for watching and take care. Bye!